How's it going, guys? I wanted to create a quick video to try to explain how things are working in case anyone has to interact with any of this, and I'll just begin and go quick, and then after the video I'll probably splice together this with some actual footage of it working. So this is the motion controller right thumbstick in the motion controller pawn blueprint. For the motion controller, there's a pawn blueprint and a motion controller blueprint. It gets a little confusing. Basically, the pawn is the camera, and the motion controller is the hand itself. One of the things you can see here is this white line. This white line is the widget interaction. It's essentially a line that's shooting straight out that acts as a pointer, which, just like the home menu for the Oculus, is going to be how we interact with menus and widgets. So, the reason I share that is if our widget is active, that means that there is our UI is visible, right? When we click the right thumbstick and the widget is active, the thumbstick is going to act as a left mouse button. So I'll click on the widget. The same is true if the widget is active on release. You have to actually lift up the left mouse button, otherwise it's always going to fire. So that's important. If the widget isn't visible, then we're activating our selector, which you don't have to understand. All you have to know is that this activate selector is calling an event in the motion controller function or blueprint, and this is, for example, drawing the spline slash arc that is the selection, and this is drawing the spline or arc of the teleportation, and then this is the actual teleportation, and this is selecting the objects in the room. So that's what that's doing. So if widget's active, left mouse to click on widget. If widget's not active, we're activating the selector, disabling the selector. Now, when we release and we're using a selector, we're getting an object, and we can basically, I'm getting a reference and sending that reference of the object to a game instance. The game instance reads what that object is and feeds a string into the widget. So for example, here's a selection widget, right? There's two layers here right now, kind of messy. But you can see in the top error category, do you want to select blank? And this will draw a string constantly from selected object name. So that's how it knows. Now, again, if this is getting confusing, I'll splice in some video. The last thing I wanted to show, because this does not work automatically, it's something that I've planted in the scene. The selection widget isn't just spawning itself in front of the VR eyes anymore, like in front of your camera. It's spawning in the room based on angles and your forward director of your headset. The reason for that is when I was able to cut the depth check, the hands would still render behind the widget along with everything else. So the solution was to create this blueprint that has 6 widget positions, which are just arrows, and then a reference to the widget. So this selection widget is a component in the larger widget placement blueprint. And you can see in the scene, there's like an arrow there, there's an arrow right there, they're really small. I can try to get closer. There's an arrow right there, and there's an arrow there, and there's 2 more. You can just trust me on that one. And basically, they make a hexagon of widgets, and then we get an angle, because if you break 360 into 6, it's every 60 degrees. Every 60 degrees, a different widget will spawn based on where you're facing. The last thing is just the logic for the widgets. So if I go to the right spot here, and again, you'll be able to see an example of this. The first confirmation page, I could probably just hide this actually. You get, do you want to select bed? Yes or no. If no, this closes out. If yes, this will skip to the next layer. So categories will become visible and confirmation will become hidden. And then I haven't actually programmed any of this because I'm sure you guys will change the look of it, but for now, the fact that it's working is perfect. Then they can click, and this is the stuff that Benji sent me, one of these 6 areas of error. When they select that error, eventually we'll be able to record it. I'm not programming any of this because you guys might change the checkboxes however you want to do it. They hit OK, and then we'll send that off into some form of either spreadsheet, or we can just record it in the game instance and displayed at the end. I was thinking like maybe if we put a door in the room, when they click the door is like the end game button. Like, are you sure you'd like to leave the room? And then it records everything that they've selected as an error. But the logic for that is um, setting visibility in the BP widget placement. So that's important because this isn't becoming hidden, it's actually this widget that's becoming hidden. So that was one thing I wanted to say, and then the other thing is that every time the widget becomes active and inactive, you have to cast to the BP motion controller, which is essentially your player character, so the cast is kind of weird. And you have to turn off the widget active, and you have to turn off enable hit testing, which is how the widget interaction knows to click on the widget. And you have to turn off the show debug, and the debug is the actual laser that makes up the widget. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Yeah, we kept it under 6 minutes. And then I'm going to put this video together with an actual example of everything I just said, and hopefully this helps a lot.